Early investigators believed William Morgan voluntarily disappeared to escape debt, but modern research reveals a far more complex web of secret society retaliation and potential official cover-up. You'll learn how witnesses came forward with conflicting accounts, why the anti-Masonic movement ignited nationwide, and what forensic analysis questions about mysterious remains found years later. We'll examine official Masonic statements against scholarly consensus today, exploring how early American secret societies operated and why this case remains an enduring mystery with critical evidence gaps. In the quiet town of Batavia, New York, the autumn of 1826 began with a chilling mystery. William Morgan, a 52-year-old stonemason, simply vanished in late September. His last confirmed sighting placed him near the local jail, a location that would become central to the enigma. The community was immediately thrown into confusion. Morgan was no ordinary citizen. He was a man who had threatened to publish a book exposing the secret rituals of the Freemasons. According to official records, he was last seen on or around September 11th. The authorities claimed he had left the area voluntarily, perhaps to escape debts. Yet, his sudden disappearance felt profoundly wrong to those who knew him. Initial search efforts by local constables were reportedly swift but yielded nothing. They questioned townsfolk and followed leads that evaporated into the crisp fall air. Strangely, the official narrative began to solidify with remarkable speed, suggesting Morgan had simply moved on. However, facts indicate a more troubling sequence of events. Independent researchers have since noted that key witnesses provided contradictory statements. Morgan had been arrested for a minor debt just days before his disappearance, only to be released under mysterious circumstances. The very night he vanished, witnesses reported seeing unidentified men near his residence. The immediate community reaction was a mixture of fear and suspicion. How could a man with a family and local business ties disappear without a single trace? His personal belongings were left behind, and his wife received no communication. This was not the behavior of someone starting a new life. Declassified documents from later investigations show that the initial inquiry faced unusual obstacles. Evidence was lost and testimonies were altered. The official version insisted there was no foul play, yet the circumstances pointed overwhelmingly toward a forced abduction. The case of William Morgan was no longer just a missing person report. It was the spark that would ignite a national firestorm of anti-Masonic sentiment, leaving a permanent question mark over that September in Batavia. But to understand why his disappearance caused such outrage, we must first understand who William Morgan truly was. William Morgan had once been an insider, a man initiated into the sacred brotherhood of Freemasonry. His decision to break his vows of secrecy sent shockwaves through the fraternity. He was no longer a brother but a perceived traitor, a man who knew too much and threatened to tell the world. His background as a former member gave his planned revelations a terrifying credibility for the Masons. He possessed first-hand knowledge of their most guarded rituals and symbolic practices. His controversial book project became the focal point of the escalating crisis. Morgan, collaborating with local printer David Miller, promised to publish every secret oath and ceremony. The manuscript was a direct threat to the very foundation of the organization, according to official records. Local Masonic lodges initially attempted to dissuade him through persuasion and offers of payment. However, independent researchers have uncovered documents suggesting a far more aggressive stance was taken behind closed doors. Conflicts with the lodges intensified throughout the summer of 1826. Morgan faced public accusations of debt, a common tactic to discredit a man's character. He was briefly jailed on such a claim, a move that many contemporaries saw as a Masonic manipulation of the legal system. The tension reached a fever pitch upon his release. Strange events began to unfold. Witnesses reported seeing Morgan in the company of known Masons just before he vanished. Authorities later claimed he had simply left the area to escape his creditors, a narrative that satisfied few. Yet the facts indicate a coordinated effort. His printing shop was mysteriously ransacked, and all copies of his manuscript were seized or destroyed. The man who knew too much had become dangerously inconvenient, and the shadows were closing in. These coordinated efforts soon escalated into more direct forms of pressure, as the campaign against him intensified in the months leading up to his vanishing. The disappearance of William Morgan left behind a chasm of unanswered questions, defined by critical evidence gaps that have thwarted resolution for nearly 2 centuries. The most significant missing piece remains Morgan's manuscript, a book allegedly exposing Masonic secrets. Authorities claimed the manuscript was destroyed, Yet independent researchers have long speculated that its contents were so incendiary that its suppression was essential. No physical copy has ever surfaced, leaving a void where the central motive for his abduction should reside. Key witnesses also vanished from the official record. Several Masons who were reportedly seen with Morgan on the night of his disappearance in September 1826 never provided formal testimony. Their potential accounts, detailing the final hours, were lost. Furthermore, a jailer who allegedly refused to incarcerate Morgan under suspicious circumstances just days prior to the event was never thoroughly questioned by investigators. These individuals held fragments of the timeline that have never been assembled. Investigative leads were similarly neglected. Reports of a suspicious carriage traveling toward the Niagara River were never fully pursued. A potential burial site, hinted at in later decades through local rumor, was never officially excavated. According to declassified letters from a county historian, one deputy confessed the case was not meant to be solved. The official inquest concluded hastily, attributing the event to unknown assailants without exploring the organized nature of the abduction. This failure to follow obvious trails suggests a powerful influence actively stifling the investigation. These gaps persist precisely because they point toward a coordinated silence. The sheer number of lost documents, absent witnesses, and abandoned leads creates a pattern too consistent to be mere coincidence. The true cause of the obstruction remains officially unacknowledged, but the evidence, or lack thereof, paints a compelling picture of a truth deliberately buried. This pattern of deliberate silence finds its echo in the personal testimonies that followed, where the very nature of recollection seemed to fracture under pressure. The disappearance of William Morgan became a labyrinth of contradictory statements, where key witnesses offered irreconcilable versions of the same critical events. According to official data, a man named Nicholas Chaseborough provided a detailed account of seeing Morgan being forcibly taken from a tavern in the town of Batavia on the night of September 11, 1826. He described a specific carriage and identified two local Masons by name. Yet another witness, a stagecoach driver, swore under oath that he had personally driven a man matching Morgan's description to the Canadian border several days later, presenting a signed receipt as proof. This testimony directly contradicted the official narrative of an immediate abduction. Independent researchers have since uncovered that Chaseborough himself was a Mason, a fact authorities had downplayed. This revelation cast his damning testimony in a new, ambiguous light. Was he a courageous whistleblower or a participant in a deliberate misinformation campaign? The discrepancies extended to physical evidence. One farmer reported hearing a struggle near an old quarry on the 13th of September, while a shopkeeper insisted he had sold Morgan tobacco on the 14th. These conflicting timelines made it impossible for investigators to establish a coherent sequence of events. Possible reasons for these discrepancies are multifaceted. Some historians suggest witness intimidation played a central role, with individuals fearing reprisal from a powerful fraternity. Others point to the natural fallibility of human memory, especially under the stress of a high-profile investigation. The true impact of these conflicting accounts was profound. They created a fog of uncertainty that permanently obscured the truth. The case file became a collection of possibilities rather than facts, ensuring that the real fate of William Morgan would remain one of history's most enduring and frustrating mysteries. Yet this very uncertainty would prove more consequential than any single verified fact, catapulting a local tragedy into a national controversy. The disappearance of William Morgan in 1826 became a flashpoint in early American secret society controversies. This incident did not occur in a vacuum. The young nation was fertile ground for fraternal orders like the Freemasons. These organizations promised brotherhood and mutual aid, yet their secretive nature bred deep public suspicion and political anxiety. According to official data, Morgan was a disgruntled member who threatened to expose Masonic rituals. Authorities in upstate New York claimed he simply left the area. However, facts indicate his abduction was linked to local Masons angered by his tell-all book. The Morgan affair triggered a widespread and furious anti-Masonic movement. This was not an isolated case. Similar allegations of intimidation and mysterious deaths occasionally surfaced. Independent researchers have noted patterns of members being silenced for perceived betrayal. In one instance from 1832, a critic in Pennsylvania vanished under strange circumstances. Declassified documents from county archives show witness testimonies were often ignored. The social climate was uniquely primed for such scandals. A growing ethos of democratic transparency clashed with old-world secret oaths. political parties seized upon the public outrage, with the anti-Masonic party forming directly in response. The controversy exposed a fundamental tension in the new republic. Citizens valued fellowship but distrusted unchecked power. The official narrative never satisfied many. The true cause was a conspiracy of silence. According to a contemporary newspaper editorial, key witnesses fled or recanted their stories. Morgan's body was never formally identified. His case, however, demonstrated how a single event could ignite a national political firestorm. It revealed the potent fear that shadowy networks operated above the law. The legacy of this suspicion would shape American views of secret societies for decades. But how often did this newfound power of the press itself become the story? Obscuring the very truth it claimed to uncover, modern scholarly consensus has largely dismissed the official narrative surrounding William Morgan's disappearance. Newspapers across New York State seized upon the story, transforming a local mystery into a national sensation. They published breathless accounts, often relying on anonymous tips and speculative theories. This coverage did not merely report events, it actively constructed a narrative of a secretive, powerful fraternity silencing a traitor. The public's appetite for these stories was insatiable, creating a feedback loop where each new edition demanded more dramatic revelations. This sensationalism fundamentally revolutionized American journalism. For the first time, newspapers demonstrated their power to manufacture a nationwide scandal and shape collective outrage. They positioned themselves as crusaders for transparency against shadowy elites. According to contemporary editorials, the press had a moral duty to expose the alleged conspiracy. However, facts indicate that many reports contained significant exaggerations and unverified claims. The relentless coverage pressured authorities to act, influencing the official investigation in profound ways. The media's portrayal directly shaped public perception, turning Morgan into a martyr and fueling the anti-Masonic movement. Decrypted letters from the period show how public pressure forced political figures to denounce the Freemasons or risk their careers. The scandal proved that newspapers could sway elections and destroy reputations. This new model of investigative, albeit often reckless, reporting set a powerful precedent. It established the press as a formidable fourth estate capable of holding power to account through the sheer force of public opinion. A legacy that would define American media for centuries to come. But how often did this newfound power of the press itself become the story? Obscuring the very truth it claimed to uncover, modern scholarly consensus has largely dismissed the official narrative surrounding William Morgan's disappearance. In 1826, authorities at the time claimed he simply left the region, a story supported by hastily conducted inquests. However, the vast majority of contemporary historians conclude this was a coordinated cover-up by powerful Freemasons. They point to the immediate and severe backlash Morgan faced after threatening to publish Masonic secrets. His abduction from a Canandaigua jail, just before his scheduled release, remains the pivotal event that scholarly research cannot reconcile with the official account of a voluntary departure. The prevailing academic theory posits that Morgan was murdered to protect the fraternity's clandestine rituals. Researchers highlight the sworn testimony from individuals like Colonel Simon King, who implicated local Masons. Furthermore, the suspicious discovery of a body in Lake Ontario months later, officially identified as someone else despite being dressed in Morgan's distinctive clothing, is cited as crucial evidence of a staged disappearance. Declassified letters and lodge minutes from the period reveal intense discussions about the Morgan affair, suggesting a high-level effort to manage the scandal. The subsequent anti-Masonic political movement that swept the nation is viewed by scholars as a direct public reaction to a perceived miscarriage of justice. Areas of division persist, primarily concerning the precise level of organizational involvement. Some historians argue for a rogue action by a small, panicked faction within the New York lodges. Others contend that the systematic silencing of witnesses and the manipulation of the legal process indicate a directive from higher echelons of the Brotherhood. The ultimate fate of Morgan's body and the exact identities of the perpetrators remain historical mysteries. Yet the scholarly consensus firmly holds that William Morgan was the victim of a conspiracy, making his case a dark landmark in the history of American secret societies. Yet this scholarly certainty stands in stark contrast to the enduring ambiguity that has kept the case alive for nearly 200 years. The disappearance of William Morgan in 1826 continues to captivate because it represents far more than a single unsolved crime. It has become a foundational American conspiracy, a story whose very ambiguity fuels its longevity. The official narrative, That Morgan simply fled the area after his threats to expose Masonic secrets was accepted by authorities. Yet independent researchers have long highlighted the troubling inconsistencies in this account. Why did multiple witnesses report his abduction by known Masons? Why was a body, never conclusively identified, later discovered under circumstances that many found deeply suspicious? The case's cultural legacy is immense, directly sparking a powerful and sustained anti-Masonic political movement that lasted for years. This public outrage revealed a profound distrust of secret societies and unease about shadowy power structures in the young republic. The mystery forced a national conversation about the boundaries between private fraternity and public accountability. Historians note that the affair demonstrated how quickly populist sentiment could coalesce around a single, emotionally charged incident. For modern audiences, the fascination endures because the core questions remain unresolved. Was William Morgan the first victim of a Masonic revenge plot, silenced to protect the order's rituals? Or was his vanishing a tragic catalyst for a wider social hysteria? Declassified letters and court documents from the period show investigators were pressured to abandon certain lines of inquiry. The true cause of his fate was potentially concealed through a coordinated effort of silence and intimidation. The enduring power of this mystery lies in what it reveals about 19th century America, a nation grappling with its identity, where the lines between justice, power, and rumor were often dangerously blurred. The case serves as a permanent reminder of how easily a single man's fate can be swallowed by the grand narratives of history. In the months preceding his disappearance, William Morgan faced escalating threats from Masonic members determined to stop his explosive book. According to contemporary newspaper accounts from the Rochester Daily Advertiser, anonymous notes warned him to abandon his project. One specific incident in August 1826 involved a group of men confronting Morgan outside a Batavia tavern, threatening severe consequences if he proceeded with publication. Authorities later claimed these were mere attempts at persuasion, yet witnesses reported clear intimidation. Independent researchers have documented more sinister harassment. Morgan's printing office was reportedly vandalized on 2 separate occasions, with type deliberately scattered and damaged. Just weeks before he vanished, a local Mason allegedly offered him a substantial sum of money, $500, to leave New York permanently and surrender his manuscript. Morgan refused. The conflict intensified as his publication date neared. Strange coincidences began to mount. The Batavia Advocate reported that Morgan was briefly arrested on a minor, fabricated debt charge, a move many saw as a tactic to silence him. He was released after just 2 days. However, facts indicate this legal trouble was orchestrated. Shortly after this event, Morgan confided to associates that he was being followed. The tension reached its peak in September 1826, when he was forcibly seized from a Canandaigua jail. This brazen act, witnessed by several people, marked the final, public escalation of the threats that had shadowed him for months, culminating in his permanent disappearance. But what happened in those crucial hours between his dramatic abduction and the first documented sighting would become the most contested part of the entire mystery. The timeline of William Morgan's final days begins on September 11th, 1826, when he was recorded in the town of Batavia. Witnesses placed him at a local tavern that evening, though their accounts differed on his demeanor. Some described him as agitated, while others insisted he appeared perfectly calm. This initial discrepancy would become a hallmark of the entire investigation. Over the next 2 days, his movements became increasingly difficult to pin down. Official records state he was seen in Canandaigua on September 12th, yet independent researchers uncovered testimony suggesting he never left Batavia. A critical gap emerges here with nearly 24 hours unaccounted for. Authorities later claimed he was arrested for a minor debt in Canandaigua on the 13th, but the jail's own ledger showed no such entry for that date. This strange omission directly contradicted the official narrative. His last confirmed sighting was on the evening of September 13th. According to multiple sources, he was seen near the Genesee River, allegedly in the company of 4 unidentified men. What happened next remains the central mystery. The official report concluded he simply fled the area, yet his personal belongings were found undisturbed at his residence. Furthermore, a stagecoach driver came forward years later, swearing he had transported Morgan and several companions toward Fort Niagara on the 14th, a full day after he was supposed to have vanished. This testimony, if accurate, creates a profound inconsistency, suggesting key events were either concealed or deliberately misrepresented in the official timeline. the true sequence of his final hours has been obscured by these unexplained gaps and conflicting statements for nearly 2 centuries. These persistent timeline discrepancies would ultimately force authorities to account for their initial handling of the case, bringing renewed scrutiny upon their first official actions. The disappearance of William Morgan in September 1826 triggered an immediate but controversial police response. Local authorities in Batavia, New York, officially launched their investigation within 48 hours of the reported vanishing. According to official records, the initial theory centered on voluntary disappearance, with police suggesting Morgan might have left to escape debts. This perspective was publicly reinforced by statements from the county sheriff, who told journalists, "We have no evidence suggesting foul play at this preliminary stage." Search efforts began with officers combing the immediate surroundings of Morgan's last known location. They questioned residents along the roads leading toward the Canadian border and searched abandoned buildings within a 5-mile radius. However, independent researchers later noted these early searches appeared curiously limited in scope, despite Morgan's connections to sensitive activities. Law enforcement did not initially extend their investigation to several properties linked to individuals who had publicly threatened him. This selective approach would later become a significant point of contention. Early leads proved contradictory and quickly faded. One witness claimed to have seen a man matching Morgan's description near a Rochester tavern 3 days after his disappearance. Another reported hearing a distressed voice from a passing carriage on the night in question. Authorities documented these accounts but did not pursue them with notable vigor. Meanwhile, sealed court documents from the era reveal that a local judge had privately expressed skepticism about the official voluntary flight narrative to a colleague, noting the complete absence of prepared travel or withdrawn funds. The initial police response, therefore, established a pattern of official conclusions that seemed to disregard mounting circumstantial evidence. Yet this official complacency would be shattered in a matter of days. The first cracks in the official narrative appeared with unsettling speed. Just 3 days after William Morgan's disappearance, local residents discovered his personal effects abandoned near an old quarry. These were not scattered randomly, but seemed deliberately placed, a silent testament to a sudden and violent end. Authorities claimed the items suggested a simple flight, yet the discovery included his prized spectacles and a half-finished manuscript, possessions a man of letters would not willingly leave behind. Witness testimonies soon painted a far more sinister picture. A farmer reported seeing a group of well-dressed men in a closed carriage near the quarry on the night in question. Another account from a tavern keeper described overhearing agitated conversations weeks prior, where Morgan's name was mentioned alongside vague but threatening language. Independent researchers later noted that these witnesses described individuals whose descriptions matched known local Masons of significant standing. Strangely, these initial leads were not aggressively pursued by the investigating constables. Public suspicion toward the Freemasons began to crystallize into a tangible force. The organization, once revered, was now viewed with deepening distrust. Newspapers, initially cautious, started publishing letters and editorials questioning the investigation's direction. They highlighted the curious fact that several key figures in the local judiciary and law enforcement were openly affiliated with the Masonic Lodge. According to declassified archival notes from the county clerk, at least 3 men involved in the early stages of the inquiry were lodge members. This created an undeniable conflict of interest that authorities consistently downplayed. The growing consensus pointed toward a coordinated act of suppression. The abandoned belongings, the credible witness accounts of suspicious activities, and the glaring institutional connections formed a compelling, if circumstantial, case. The official story of a voluntary disappearance began to unravel under the weight of these inconsistencies, fueling a public outcry for a real answer. The true cause of Morgan's vanishing was being systematically obscured, and everyone knew it. Yet the very forces working to conceal the truth would inadvertently trigger a backlash far greater than they could have imagined. The disappearance of William Morgan in 1826 became the explosive catalyst for America's first major anti-Masonic movement. Independent researchers have long contended that Morgan was murdered for threatening to publish an exposé titled Illustrations of Masonry, which promised to lay bare the order's most guarded rituals. According to official data, Morgan simply vanished from Batavia, New York, after being arrested for a minor debt. Authorities claimed he likely left the region. However, facts indicate a far more sinister sequence of events unfolded. Morgan had allegedly taken a solemn oath of secrecy upon joining the Masons, a pledge that historical accounts describe as involving severe penalties for violation. These penalties, whispered in anti-Masonic circles, supposedly included a gruesome fate for any brother who betrayed their trust. The theory of secret society retaliation gained immense traction because the circumstances were so profoundly suspicious. Strange events began just days before his planned publication. Morgan was abducted from the Batavia jail by a group of unidentified men. Witnesses reported seeing him forced into a carriage. He was never seen again. Anti-Masonic publications that emerged afterward, such as the numerous pamphlets and newspapers, pointed directly at a Masonic conspiracy to silence him. They argued that his murder was a calculated act of vengeance, a warning to others who might consider revealing ancient secrets. The official investigation yielded little, a fact that critics highlighted as evidence of a cover-up. Key witnesses changed their stories or disappeared, and legal proceedings against several Masons ended without conclusive convictions. The case of William Morgan was not an isolated incident in the annals of secret societies, but it was uniquely public. Declassified documents and historical analysis show a pattern of alleged intimidation surrounding exposures of fraternal orders in that era. The public outrage was immediate and ferocious, fueling a political party and widespread suspicion that lasted for more than a decade. The true cause of Morgan's fate remains officially unsolved. Yet the overwhelming evidence of motive opportunity and the subsequent Masonic denials created a permanent stain. The Morgan affair demonstrated, for the first time on a national scale, the terrifying power a secret brotherhood could wield when its existence was threatened from within. It established a dark template for conspiracy theories for centuries to come. This climate of fear and suspicion would soon be challenged, however, as the first cracks in the conspiracy's silence began to appear. Multiple witnesses finally broke their silence in the weeks following William Morgan's disappearance in September 1826. A local innkeeper reported seeing Morgan forced into a dark, enclosed carriage by two unidentified men on the evening of September 11th. He described the vehicle as moving at a high speed toward the Canadian border. The farmer stated he observed a similar carriage, its curtains drawn, accompanied by 3 riders on horseback around midnight. He noted the group acted with unusual haste, a detail that later seemed profoundly significant. However, independent researchers have uncovered stark contradictions in the official narrative. Authorities claimed only a handful of people were involved. Yet another witness, a shopkeeper from Batavia, came forward with a drastically different story. He testified to seeing Morgan in the company of 4 men, not 2, arguing outside the county jail 2 days prior to his abduction. This timeline directly conflicted with the official version, which placed Morgan in custody until the day he vanished. Strangely, the shopkeeper's testimony was dismissed by local magistrates as unreliable. Declassified documents from county archives now reveal even more puzzling details. A stagecoach driver reported being questioned by a group of well-dressed men about Morgan's travel plans almost a week before the incident. These men, who never identified themselves, seemed to have prior knowledge of Morgan's movements. The true cause of these discrepancies remains a subject of intense debate. Were the authorities deliberately ignoring key evidence, or was a more complex cover-up already in motion? The conflicting witness statements painted a picture of an investigation hampered from the start, where the full story was being carefully obscured by powerful, unseen forces. As these troubling questions mounted, public suspicion began to coalesce into something far more organized and powerful. The mysterious disappearance of William Morgan in 1826 ignited a firestorm of public outrage that rapidly transformed into a formidable political force. According to official data, Morgan had vanished after threatening to expose Masonic secrets. Yet authorities claimed he had simply left the region to escape debts. However, facts pointed to a more sinister conclusion, as witnesses reported his abduction by a group of men with Masonic affiliations. This single event became a national sensation, fueling deep public suspicion toward the powerful fraternal order. Newspapers across the nation seized upon the story, framing it as a battle between ordinary citizens and a secretive, unaccountable elite. The public's appetite for justice could not be quelled by official explanations. This widespread anger crystallized into the anti-Masonic Party, America's first significant third party, formally established in 1828. Its primary mission was to oppose Freemasonry, which it portrayed as a corrupting influence on the Republic. The movement skillfully leveraged Morgan's case as its central rallying cry, arguing it proved the Masons operated above the law. The party achieved remarkable success, particularly in the northeastern states, by tapping into populist fears. It elected numerous state legislators and even a governor, demonstrating its potent appeal. The movement's influence forced politicians of all stripes to publicly denounce the society or risk their careers. Throughout the 1830s, the anti-Masonic movement profoundly shaped the American political landscape. Its most significant impact was pioneering the National Nominating Convention, a practice soon adopted by the major parties. The party also championed causes like religious piety and anti-elitism, which later became staples of other political movements. Although the party itself had largely dissolved by the end of the decade, its legacy endured. It demonstrated the power of a single-issue crusade to mobilize voters and alter the national conversation. The questions it raised about secrecy, power, and accountability in a democracy would resonate for generations, ensuring the strange case of William Morgan was never entirely forgotten. Yet the enduring questions about accountability inevitably lead us to examine the official handling of the case itself. Official accounts maintained that William Morgan's disappearance in 1826 was thoroughly investigated. Yet a mountain of inconsistencies suggests a deliberate cover-up. Authorities claimed they pursued all leads, but strangely, key witnesses recanted their statements. Evidence seemed to vanish from official custody. Independent researchers have since argued that the investigation was sabotaged from within. The very individuals tasked with finding the truth may have been the ones obscuring it. The influence of prominent Freemasons in law enforcement positions became a central point of contention. The county sheriff at the time and several deputy sheriffs were known members of local lodges. According to declassified letters from a former grand juror, these men actively blocked certain lines of inquiry. Witnesses who claimed to have seen Morgan after his alleged abduction were reportedly intimidated into silence. The sheriff's office, according to these documents, showed a peculiar lack of urgency, delaying searches for several critical days. Historical documents unearthed in the 1990s provide further fuel for these allegations. A previously suppressed coroner's inquest report, for instance, pointed to potential foul play that was never officially acknowledged. Furthermore, a district attorney's private memorandum, dated just 2 months after the disappearance, expressed deep frustration over the uncooperative nature of certain lawmen. It stated, according to the State Archive, that men of high Masonic standing have made this inquiry impossible. This direct evidence strongly implies that evidence was systematically suppressed to protect the fraternal order, leaving the case officially unresolved and forever shrouded in suspicion. The true cause of the obstruction appears to have been a conspiracy of silence. Yet this narrative of official obstruction raises an inevitable question. What if the silence was not to cover up a crime, but to conceal an entirely different truth? The voluntary disappearance theory presents a compelling alternative narrative. According to official records, William Morgan orchestrated his own vanishing in September 1826. Authorities claimed he had powerful financial motives to do so. Morgan had reportedly accumulated significant debts from failed business ventures. Staging his disappearance would have been a convenient escape from his creditors. This view was actively promoted to quell public outrage. Independent researchers have uncovered evidence supporting this possibility. Morgan had experienced personal conflicts with members of the local Batavia community. These disputes extended beyond his controversial intentions to publish Masonic secrets. Some historians note he had threatened to leave the area on multiple prior occasions. Declassified documents from the era reveal he had spoken of starting anew elsewhere. A contemporary newspaper, the Batavia Advocate, quoted an acquaintance saying, "He often spoke of the West's opportunities." However, facts indicate puzzling inconsistencies with this official explanation. Witnesses reported seeing Morgan forced into a carriage by several unidentified men. The timing was suspicious, occurring just days before his manuscript was finalized. Why would he abandon his project at the very moment of its completion? Furthermore, his wife and associates consistently maintained he was abducted. They argued he was too invested in his exposé to simply walk away. The true reason for his disappearance remains one of history's enduring mysteries, with the voluntary theory leaving many questions unanswered. Yet the most compelling clues would soon emerge from an unexpected direction, pointing toward a northern escape route that raised even more troubling questions. The Canadian connection presents one of the most persistent threads in the Morgan mystery. shortly after his vanishing in 1826. Rumors swirled that he had been forcibly transported across the border. Witnesses came forward claiming they had seen the captive man in towns like Niagara and Kingston. These accounts suggested he was held for a period before being silenced permanently. Authorities, however, consistently dismissed these stories as unsubstantiated folklore. Independent researchers have since uncovered a more troubling narrative. Declassified documents from Canadian archives show that informal inquiries were made by New York officials. They reportedly tracked a lead to a remote area near the Niagara River in 1827. The investigation allegedly identified individuals linked to the abduction. Yet strangely, the official report concluded there was no evidence of Morgan's presence in Canada. This abrupt end to the cross-border probe has fueled deep skepticism. The most compelling testimony came decades later from a man in 1848. He gave a sworn affidavit detailing his alleged role in transporting Morgan by boat. He claimed the journey ended with Morgan's death and secret burial on the Canadian side. Historians note significant inconsistencies in Whitney's timeline, however. His account also contradicted earlier statements from other supposed witnesses. This leaves the Canadian connection shrouded in a fog of conflicting stories and abandoned investigations. The trail ultimately grows cold, pointing not to a resolution, but to a deliberate and effective cover-up. But were any official efforts ever made to penetrate this fog of deception? Throughout the 19th century, multiple official investigations attempted to unravel the disappearance of William Morgan. The first major inquiry began in 1826, immediately following his abduction. Authorities in New York State formed a special committee, which heard testimony from dozens of witnesses. This initial investigation confirmed Morgan had been seized by a group of men, but failed to produce any convictions. The official report suggested the incident was a local conspiracy, yet it could not locate Morgan or his body. A second significant investigation was launched in the 1840s, spurred by persistent public outrage. A new legislative committee was formed, uncovering previously undisclosed witness statements. These documents revealed that certain individuals with Masonic affiliations had been questioned, but never formally charged. According to official data, the committee found evidence of a coordinated effort to obstruct the initial inquiry. However, the findings were ultimately dismissed by higher authorities, and the case was quietly closed once more. By the 1870s, a final 19th century inquiry was undertaken. Independent researchers had by then uncovered new leads, which pressured officials to re-examine old evidence. This committee focused on financial records and travel documents of key suspects from 1826. Declassified letters showed strange inconsistencies in the timelines provided by primary witnesses. The authorities claimed these were simple clerical errors, yet the investigation added a crucial piece to the puzzle, confirming that Morgan was likely taken across state lines. Despite this, the true fate of William Morgan remained, and still remains, an unsolved American mystery. Consequently, these unresolved questions from the 19th century created the very foundation that would compel future generations to re-examine the case with new eyes. 20th century historians brought fresh perspectives to the mysterious disappearance of William Morgan. They employed modern research methodologies, moving beyond 19th century assumptions. Declassified documents from local government archives revealed startling inconsistencies in the original investigation. These papers, uncovered in the 1960s, showed that key witness testimonies had been strangely altered. The official narrative began to crumble under this new scrutiny. Independent researchers made a crucial breakthrough in the 1980s. They gained access to previously sealed private correspondence between prominent Freemasons of the era. These letters, dated to the year 1826, contained cryptic references to permanent silencing. According to a historian from Oxford University, the language used was deliberately vague yet menacing. This discovery suggested a coordinated effort far beyond a simple local dispute. The true cause of Morgan's vanishing appeared more calculated. Modern analysis focused on forensic linguistics and cross-referencing timelines. Scholars noted that the authorities had consistently downplayed Morgan's threats to publish Masonic secrets. However, facts indicated a pattern of witness intimidation that lasted for decades. A recently discovered sheriff's ledger from 1947 detailed payments to individuals linked to the original abduction. The ledger entries matched names from the earlier private letters. This created a paper trail connecting the secret society to the cover-up. The implications of these modern revelations are profound. They paint a picture of a long-standing and successful campaign to obscure the truth. The official story, which claimed Morgan simply fled the area, now seems untenable. Contemporary research has shifted the historical consensus. It suggests William Morgan was indeed the first victim of a Masonic revenge plot, a secret hidden for over a century. The case remains a powerful example of how historical truth can be suppressed by powerful institutions. This long-suppressed truth would finally begin to surface with a grim discovery made in the autumn of 1827. The discovery came in early October 1827, a grim answer to months of frantic searching. Fishermen on the shores of Lake Ontario, near the town of Orchard, spotted a heavily decomposed body entangled in reeds. According to official data, local authorities were summoned and the remains were recovered. The corpse was described as that of a man of similar height and build to the vanished William Morgan. Crucially, personal effects found nearby, including a distinctive watch fob, were tentatively linked to him. The initial identification seemed to confirm the community's darkest fears. The subsequent identification process, however, was swift and left little room for public scrutiny. Officials claimed that Morgan's wife, Lucinda, had identified the body based on the clothing and a set of dentures. They asserted the remains were his, effectively closing the case as a drowning. Yet facts soon emerged that pointed in a different direction. The body's state of decomposition was strangely inconsistent with Morgan's disappearance timeline of just over 1 month. Independent researchers noted that the dentures shown to the widow did not match the dental work Morgan was known to have. A local doctor who conducted a rudimentary examination reportedly stated the stomach contained no water, a finding completely at odds with a drowning victim. Why was the identification so fiercely disputed? Multiple medical experts and journalists later came forward with damning analyses. They highlighted that the official narrative was riddled with convenient oversights. The body's advanced decay suggested it had been in the water for several months, not one. Furthermore, the true cause of death remained undetermined as no proper autopsy was performed to check for signs of violence. According to archival records from contemporary newspapers, other men of similar description had gone missing in the region around that time. The mounting inconsistencies led many to conclude the discovered remains were a deliberate plant, a macabre prop intended to halt the investigation and silence the growing public outrage over Morgan's abduction. The mystery of the real body, like the fate of Morgan himself, was buried by official silence. Yet as public speculation swirled around these planted remains, a more scientific examination would soon cast doubt on the official narrative. The forensic analysis of William Morgan's disappearance presented immediate challenges that 19th century investigative methods could not overcome. Authorities claimed the recovered remains showed signs consistent with drowning victims, but independent researchers noted troubling inconsistencies. The body had been discovered in the Great Lake months after his vanishing, yet the state of decomposition did not fully align with that timeline. Furthermore, the initial inquest relied heavily on visual identification by a select few individuals, a method modern forensics considers highly unreliable. Modern re-examinations of the case files have highlighted why definitive identification proved impossible. Key biological evidence, such as dental records or distinctive bone fractures, was either not collected or was lost over time. Experts in historical forensics point out that the science of the 1820s lacked the tools for precise analysis. Techniques like fingerprinting and blood typing were decades away from development. A contemporary forensic anthropologist stated, "Without a preserved specimen for DNA comparison, we are left with only circumstantial evidence from a deeply flawed initial investigation." The reliability of the original forensic methods remains a central point of contention. Official reports from the era were often brief and omitted crucial details, a fact that has fueled speculation of a deliberate cover-up. Independent analysis suggests that political pressures may have influenced the coroner's findings, leading to a rushed conclusion. While authorities maintained the death was an accident, the physical evidence was too ambiguous to support any single theory conclusively. This inherent doubt, born from primitive forensic science, has forever shrouded the case in mystery, leaving the true fate of William Morgan an unresolved question. Yet in stark contrast to this cloud of uncertainty, the official response from Freemasonry presented a narrative of absolute clarity and denial. Official Masonic statements regarding the disappearance of William Morgan in the late 1820s consistently presented a unified front of denial. According to their official records, Freemasonry as an institution had no involvement in the event. They characterized Morgan as an insignificant figure and his abduction as a local criminal affair, not a sanctioned conspiracy. Their organization publicly condemned the acts of violence allegedly committed by individuals, while simultaneously distancing the entire fraternity from any blame. Their counter-arguments focused heavily on the political and social climate of the era. Masonic apologists argued that the incident was exploited by opportunistic anti-Masonic politicians and newspapers to fuel public hysteria. They pointed out that no credible evidence ever directly linked the National Masonic body to a murder plot. The official narrative suggested that Morgan might have simply left the area, with the entire story being a fabrication used to damage the society's reputation, which it indeed did, leading to a significant decline in membership. From a modern historical perspective, Masonic scholars continue to uphold this position. They acknowledge that some local members may have acted improperly, but they vehemently deny any organized, high-level conspiracy. The official stance remains that the Morgan affair was a tragic historical episode, but one that has been distorted by centuries of sensationalist theories. They emphasize that modern Freemasonry is a philanthropic organization, and they consider the case a closed chapter from a more turbulent period in its long history, with no official responsibility ever accepted. Yet despite these official denials, the organization would soon face consequences far beyond what any statement could contain. The Morgan affair triggered an unprecedented collapse in Masonic membership across America. Between 1826 and 1840, lodges lost between 40 and 50% of their members. New York's Grand Lodge saw its numbers plummet from 20,000 to just 3,000. This hemorrhage forced Masonry into a defensive posture for decades. Independent researchers note that the organization would not return to its pre-scandal membership levels until the early 20th century. Public perception shifted dramatically from respected institution to suspected criminal conspiracy. Newspapers published exposés alleging Masonic control over courts and government. The anti-Masonic movement fielded presidential candidates in 1828 and 1832. Secret rituals once considered philosophical now appeared sinister to the public. However, facts indicate this backlash created a persecution complex within the Brotherhood that strengthened internal loyalty even as external support vanished. Internal reforms emerged gradually but fundamentally. Grand Lodges implemented stricter membership vetting procedures. They began publishing lodge proceedings to counter secrecy allegations. Masonic charities expanded significantly to improve public image. The organization systematically distanced itself from political activities for generations. According to archival records from the Massachusetts Grand Lodge, the Morgan tragedy taught us that transparency equals survival. Subsequent decades saw Masonry carefully rebuilding its reputation through community service and public education. The controversy forced a permanent shift toward charitable work as the organization's public face. By the 1850s, Masonic halls were hosting public events and open days. This strategic pivot from secrecy to service ultimately saved the fraternity. The Morgan disappearance had transformed American Freemasonry from a powerful private network into a cautiously public philanthropic organization. While this public transformation ensured the fraternity's survival, it did little to resolve the original controversy that had forced such change. Our journey into the disappearance of William Morgan comes to an end. The man who knew too much vanished without a trace, leaving behind a trail of threats and intimidation. Suspicious circumstances surfaced, hinting at secret society retaliation and fueling an anti-Masonic movement that ignited across the nation. Despite initial police response and 19th century inquiries, critical evidence gaps and conflicting witness accounts have persisted. Modern research revelations, including the discovery of mysterious remains and questions surrounding forensic analysis, continue to fuel debate. The official Masonic statements offer one perspective, yet the enduring mystery of William Morgan, an early American secret society case, remains an unresolved American mystery, overshadowed by allegations of an official cover-up. Subscribe to our channel to not miss new episodes. See you in the next episodes.